interesting facts about this election cycle has been that women, particularly, have been very active in getting out and becoming candidates, particularly in single mandate precincts, districts. What does that mean? We elect members of Congress here by voting for one candidate. The same happens in Armenia. Armenia's parliament has 41 single mandate parliamentarians. So they represent a very specific constituency. Then there are 90 members of the Armenian parliament, altogether 131, 90 members who are chosen from party lists. So political parties who qualify will put forth a list of people, and voters will actually vote for the political party, and depending on the percentage of votes that each political party receives, they get that many seats in the parliament. Okay, so it's a mixed parliamentary system, part UK parliament type, part single mandate US parliamentary. Yes.
Alex, could you get back to this single mandate issue? I really don't understand that. Is there no other opposition? There's one person you vote for? Is that the vote?
No, what I said, I'm sorry, I misspoke. You elect one representative for yourself from the district, but there are many candidates who do run for the office. Yes, yes. There are many. In fact, one of the things that we saw this time, which was a huge progress, was a lot of independent candidates put forth their candidacies to run for the single mandate seats. And the great sort of change that we've seen this time, as I mentioned, were a lot of women. 12 women, in fact, ran for single mandate constituencies. That's a huge leap of progress in Armenia. Yes, 3 were elected from single mandate constituencies. Many more women were elected from the party list, but because they're not finalized yet, I don't know how many exactly. Yes, sir.
Are the single mandate candidates a member of a particular party, or are they completely independent?
They may be a member of a party. Most of them are, but some of them are independents. Some of them are independents. So, I mentioned that this election cycle was very important. There are other reasons why this was an important election. It was a test for Armenia. You will remember that in 2008, after the presidential elections, we had, on March 1, we had the terrible violence that occurred the night of March 1 onto the morning of March 2. I'm sorry, April 30th onto the morning of March 1. And Armenia came under a lot of international pressure, rightfully so. It had to answer against all of its obligations, international obligations, as a member of the international community. Whether those were UN obligations, whether they were European obligations, the Council of Europe, which is a human rights body in Europe, a parliamentary human rights body, had set very specific targets for Armenia to meet for this election cycle. And so everyone was very well aware of what this meant for Armenia. It meant moving forward, or it meant being further isolated from the international community, right? So Armenian officials began very early to make sure that at least the rhetoric that was coming out around elections met those targets, met the expectations that the international community had put on Armenia. One of the other challenges that was very palpable this time in Armenia was that President Sardar Sarkisyan and his ruling Republican Party was very well aware that what happened last time after the presidential elections, if you will remember, in 2008 he was elected. Then immediately after that, the protocols with Turkey came about. And if you remember, the protocols, to say the least, were very unpopular all around, both in Armenia and outside of Armenia. And you know, there were those who, you know, who took the middle ground, those who argued.
Come on in.
Sure.
Seats on there's chairs over there.
One of the lessons learned for President Sarkisian was that if he is not, and his party is not, elected in a way where they can carry the public mandate, it is very difficult for him and his party to carry through domestic and international policy in a meaningful way. And what happens when that happens is the country becomes dependent on the I want to choose my words very carefully here. It becomes the beneficiary of the welfare of other nations. Let's put it that way, okay? Other nations will dictate how Armenia can do certain things, both inside and outside. But if President Sarkisian has a popular mandate to govern, then he can actually do a lot of even more difficult things, but referring back to the electorate and saying, look, I have my citizens, my electorate standing behind me. So that was one of the other political nuances that were very, very important this time. And the other one, which again, yes, Sara.
Did you say the protocols were all related to the dynamic you just explained?
Not
turn a blind eye.
Right. I think the protocols were not necessarily directly relevant, but there was certainly a very bitter lesson learned, both for the government of Armenia as well as for Armenia's citizens. I think that's how I would characterize it, but I don't think that it influenced necessarily or directly what happened around these elections. The other thing that has started happening in Armenia is, as you know, Armenia is governed by a ruling coalition. So after the last parliamentary elections, 3 of the largest vote getters, basically, formed a ruling coalition. The Republican Party, the Rule of Law Party, which is the very junior member of the coalition, and Prosperous Armenia, right? In the last year and a half, there has been, tensions have been growing between Republicans and Prosperous Armenia, okay? And this is a very healthy thing, right? Because Armenia is a multi-party system, it's not necessary for all the parties to get along. The tension that's built inside a ruling coalition can actually produce very good results. That competition can create very good results for the voters, can actually give voters some choice when going to the polls. Now, I may be overstating that tension a little bit, but I just want to make sure that you understand why this is so important for a country that is coming off a 7-year tradition of a single-party system, right? The concept of political choice is very new for Armenia, and people are very excited about having the opportunity to choose between their political leaders. So that tension also caused a lot of attention as well as a lot of interest around the elections, right? So all of these things, sort of created the perfect storm around the May 6th parliamentary elections, and you could really, palpably feel, when you were walking on the streets, you could feel the energy, the political energy on the streets. People were really discussing policy issues. They weren't just talking about, oh, I like this guy or that guy. This guy is better than or worse than the other guy. Usually that's the conversation that takes place. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, who are the people who are running? Do they come from the business community? Are they educators, lawyers? What are their qualifications?
Very good question. This has been one of those challenges, shall we say, that Armenia has been facing. Most of Armenia's ruling
Let me just answer
elite,
Kathy's question, and I'll get back to it.
Yes. All right. So the question was, who are those who run for office in Armenia?